We started working, I think 20 years ago we started working with space syntax. And the first schemes were done before I even arrived in the office. And we used to use this quite a lot in terms of everyone was against cellular offices, and this was a perfect slide, and it's been used quite a lot since. The first meaningful exploration of office I think was undertaken was this table. This was a small advertising agency, branding agency, and they were really keen to explore different ways of working. These people were keen to do it. They wanted to do it. It wasn't being imposed. The whole cohort in that office wanted to do it. And the solution which Ralph and Simon came up with was to create a non-hierarchical table that everyone could sit at, small meeting spaces, and then little breakout spaces. So we've got the small library spaces down the side, meeting spaces, and the non-hierarchical table here. So everyone worked in a single space. And 20 years ago, that was something not many people weren't doing. No one was really doing that. But the difference here was people really wanted to do it. We moved on and we started to develop with Tim a much bigger scheme. This is an agency called HHCL. And here again, it was a much larger corporation. They wanted to work again. They wanted to work in a different way. They worked in a fashion which allowed them to do that. But we introduced things which now look fairly dated, but these were just simple things like pigeonholes, where everyone had somewhere they could communicate. This was the days when we had our first internet connection, and me and Ralph used to sit there trying to trace the traffic flows in Los Angeles because we could. So that was the level of connectivity we had. And everyone had their own little store. Again, not something had. And we created little specific rooms. So we had a padded cell where there was no sound if you wanted something private. And we had meeting rooms which were open to the sky, which had sliding roof lights. And we learned very quickly that actually you never use an engineer who you meet in a pub because he disappears when it sticks open in the rain. We then moved on. We went through a whole series of quite larger and larger schemes. We did things for Go Airlines. We did things with Omega. But this is the scheme which I think a lot of the ideas came together. And this is Talkback headquarters. And they brought together 4 buildings on Newman Street. They pitched us against a D&B company. And the D&B company wanted to fill an atrium across here and said you could have a lot more space if you filled that in. We said, hang on a moment, there's a lot going on here, you could do a lot more. And this came from the research we've been doing about how people interact. They had a really unique situation. They were based on Percy Street, and they worked out a whole series of buildings. They had little production companies in each building, and they went up and down Percy Street meeting each other. They didn't own very much. They only had about 25 core staff. In this building, they wanted to create a situation where they could actually sublet all these buildings and put all their staff by room, but still take these out as production offices. So we created a situation where we simply pare back all the windows, open these onto decks, so we immediately got levels of communication here. We created access from all levels, and all these spaces became something which they could sublet because they all had separate access. And the ground floor, as Kirsten was saying, this incorporated a lot of what Kirsten was saying. So we had very small cell offices for the key staff, open plan offices when you wanted them, an external courtyard, and then a kitchen common room. This sort of relates back to our table. It was a domestic type space, so the reception became a hall. It was double height. And the building itself was worked on the principle of natural ventilation, because you never need to be cool in London. We had a deep set courtyard which we dug out. And all these spaces were sublettable, and they kept their core staff down here. And this is the building it produced. It produced a building where everyone seemed to feel at home and became a very, very, very well-liked space. These people work in an industry which is high salary. They wanted an attractor to be in the office. And this is where this office became really important to them. They have courtyards with light. Underneath here, there are film studios, but you don't know because even they are naturally ventilated. Everyone can talk across these walkways. You connect across here, but if they want to, they can actually shrink the whole business just out this core centre. And it carried on. So this is 15 years later. It was planted, and they've looked after it amazingly well. And one reason I include it, I'm whipping through it, but it's interesting, this has now, in the last year, been sold and it's been converted into a hotel. but apparently very little being changed in it. And it seems an ultimate in flexibility that if you can design an office properly flexible, you can actually use it for other uses. So it does actually appear to be a truly sustainable building. We argue this building to be completely naturally ventilated. This was talked back, so this was Griff Rhys-Jones and Mel Smith, and I had a stand-up argument with Mel Smith and the agent, who said they had to put air conditioning just as we'd let the tender. And we said, one, it was impossible, and two, it was pointless. When we finished this building, the same agent came back and said they had put a premium of 40% because of the design of the building and the uniqueness of the building over the air conditioning. And they got that back in their pockets because they, three of them, sold the building to Thames straight away. And that's what it ends up. That's being published fair enough. It was actually judged as one of the European offices of the year, so it was actually well received and well visited. I'll now move on to those things we learned that with working with space syntax. We've now applied those to schools. We've done master planning of them. We've done master planning in this country and abroad. And we've done it in schools, and the schools are based on the same principles of interaction. And we've done it on a lot of healthcare centres, working with people and interacting level. This is maybe a jump, but this is a co-housing scheme, which it's just finished. And I think it's quite interesting because this, again, is arranged like a domestic table. It's arranged with a set of people who wanted to live and work together. So this is a bit of a nightmare site. As you see, it's in the middle of Hackney, and this is completely surrounded by, very, very politicised people who are going to have something stuck in their back garden. We were challenged with this group of people. So we've got 2 therapists, 2 academics, a designer, and an artist. And they wanted individual places, but they wanted to live and work together. So this is maybe an extreme of how a workspace could be, and it's much more than live working, because they wanted to interact. As Kirsten said, there was a big thing here about them wanting to interact, but keep their privacy. So we end up with the 5 little houses around our big table, so they can actually talk to each other across the table, but equally they can turn their backs and watch the TV if they want to. The plan became, this is the lowest level of the pan, and what actually we ended up doing was creating the buildings. These are obviously the houses. This is a centrally shared space, so this is a communal hall, and it has communal facilities like a laundry and a workshop. All the houses feed off this communal workspace hall, but they all equally have, on the levels you go up, private entrances. So you enter this building down Copper Lane, down the shared entrance, and you can walk up. If you go down to the shared space, you walk up, you go into the private houses. So each private house has its own front door, which can be quite cut off. It goes across a walkway. They've got communal space, which they, in theory, are going to use as allotments around it. This is literally finished in the last, well, still in the final account. It's not quite finished, but it's more or less finished at the moment. And then they have their rooms. So, the therapy rooms are designed as therapy rooms, but they're part of their houses. They do actually live and work in those houses. And I think it's quite interesting because this is the communal space. So they all enter. This happens to come through the courtyard. The others actually have front doors. They use this space for communal activities, including work, and then have actual workshops, which they use to greater or less extent. But these people have chosen to live like this, and they've chosen to interact like this. And these are the people who live there, not particularly smiling. It was tried to be used for political ends by the current government, and they weren't particularly pleased by it, which is one reason not smiling. But what I find interesting about this is that these kids are growing up in schools where they're working in collaborative fashion and individual fashion. So they're used to working in cellular space and open plan space and finding things for themselves. These guys are growing up in a sort of a community working environment where they have to interact, but they can be separate. And I don't know, but I think, and I have no research to back it up, as these people get older, they will be a completely different generation from us because they've experienced it almost from primary school. And all the buildings we do are related back to that talkback scheme and right back to stuff that we did with Ralph, where how people interact. And whether you can separate the office from work now going forward, I don't know. I'm not the person who can do the research. But it's very interesting that these people have actually taken the step to live and properly work together. And it seems, well, they're very excited about it. We'll see. I mean, they say they're just closing off now. So it'll be interesting to see how they go. Thank you.
Thank you.